He's down,
All
Jeff.
right,
You're
we are
just grinding
live.
metal.
Live in the 12-cent treehouse. I'm Sean McLaughlin, producer, writer, television, comic books and stuff, and I'm here with Scott Collins is first this week.
Yeah.
Scott, you want to introduce
Hi,
yourself?
everybody. I'm Scott Collins. I've drawn some comic books.
And Steve Jones, who's in New Zealand, who's now on... Are you on Standard Time or are you on Daylight Savings now, Steve?
I don't. You guys had daylight savings. Now we've had new daylight savings. All I know is that it's we're 19 hours ahead of the West Coast.
Good.
Yeah.
Good times.
Anyway, nobody cares. It's new. It's noon here, as far as anyone else knows.
Steve's
I've
living
drawn
in the future. He's going to give us all stock tips.
Yeah.
Yes. I've drawn. Yeah. I can't play Wordle with my friends because I'm actually working on tomorrow's Wordle. But
You shouldn't have told anybody.
well, I mean, I guess if anyone wants Wordle hints, come to me. I know what it is already.
Good times.
And Jeff Johnson's here too.
That's me. I've done some stuff. So today's topic, I think, is super fun and interesting. Which one of us thought of it? Steve, was that you or Sean? Sean, yeah.
It wasn't me.
We're going to be talking about
Sean
the
loves a blank page.
Right. The blank page, the battle of the blank page. And I definitely have some thoughts about how to overcome that particular nightmare from the drawing side. But Sean, how do you approach the first page? That horrible whiteness. What do you do?
I brought it up because people are terrified of it, and I very rarely am, because by the time I start writing, I've thought about what I want to write so much that I'm usually eager to do it. The only time that it's really a problem for me is if I get an assignment from someone, like to do an animated series script, especially if it's something I haven't seen before, and I have to go and dig up some stuff. Then I have a little bit of trouble, and that's mostly because for that kind of stuff you're required to do an outline.
Right.
And if I'm writing my own stuff, I don't do an outline. I just write. Like we were talking about before we went on, we were talking about Keith Giffen, and I remember talking to him about when I was working on Aquaman, and he was doing Justice League International and Justice League, and they would give me big piles of his layouts for it, and I asked him how it just looks like you just start drawing and it's done, because he would lay out, that's how he would script.
I remember those. I got those for when I worked on Legend of Supreme. I loved those. They were the best.
They were fun.
Yeah.
They're great.
My very first comic book samples, while I was drawing backgrounds for Jeff on Wonder Man and drawing backgrounds on Sean's book for Aquaman, I think my very first samples were some Justice League Europe Keith Giffen layouts that I use as the layouts to then do cleaned up, pencils from.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I asked him, and he said he doesn't plan it out. He just has a huge stack of typing paper next to him, and he does the layouts, and it always comes out to 22 pages, and he wasn't sure how, but it always came out. I'm guessing, I'm knowing Keith and having worked with Keith for a few years on Batman Beyond and stuff. I'm guessing Keith was a little bit more to it than that. And Keith was keeping the magic alive. But I believe that for the most part, a lot of it, there's a theory that goes around, especially in serious improvisation, that we've all taken in so much media and so many stories in our lifetimes that the structure of things is in our heads.
Totally.
We just have to let it happen, as opposed to trying to plan it out and stuff. I know there are people who love to plan, but I ain't one of them. I hate writing an outline because all the fun's gone then.
Right.
I'm not discovering the story.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's almost like a wonderful little bonus that a writer gets, because when you get a script as a storyboard artist, you have to figure out every little, where the guy enters the room, how is he exiting the room, all that stuff. But before I started drawing, I would just sit and stare at the ceiling and try and picture the movie in my head, and make an edit and create the whole thing before I actually started drawing. So I knew, so the page was blank, but the images were already set.
Yeah, think more, draw less.
Yeah.
Scott, what
Shoot
about
first,
you?
ask questions later.
Exactly.
That's interesting, Sean, though, that I mean, I know some people swear by outlining. I can see why if it doesn't, I could see it appealing to the people that really like ticking boxes or making lists and then checking, drawing a line very, like your to-do list. Like it's very satisfying to cross off the stuff on your list. So I could see maybe if you have more of that personality type, that that the appeal of outlining. But that's interesting in terms of thinking of writing more like, right, when you get up and do an improv, whether it's funny or dramatic, the fact that, I mean, I don't know, it gets to that Keith Giffen thing though. Some people are just terrible. Like some people will get up in the improv like Steve Carell's character in The Office and just keep pulling out the gun and saying no but instead of yes and, but I imagine that the reason why Keith Giffen, why it did always come out to 22 for him, was that by the time he started doing that, he'd already been drawing comics for almost 20 years, so it's like some of this structurally it was already so ingrained, that he had a sense of he could just sit there and turn on the engine and just start driving.
Right. Well, I mean, I certainly feel like there is an obvious context to a page, like, oh, this has enough information on it, or this has too much information on it. So you kind of feel the rhythm of it when you're drawing it, or when you're trying to lay it out. And and even though you might not be able to put a finger on it, you can always tell.
And that's
You
a
draw
hard
without
thing
your
to
fingers?
explain.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to explain. I've had problems explaining to an editor the rhythm of the page and the rhythm of the story. That doesn't seem to like hit home very much, which confused that hell out of me when I first started writing, because that's all it was to me. There's a rhythm to it. It's like music.
Yeah.
And then the story gets told. Scott, what about you? What's your fear of a white page? If any.
There are times when it pops in, sure, either from exhaustion or other things that are influencing having a problem, or that, in my case of being most often a penciler, you're getting a script or a plot or whatever it is, and if the plot or script isn't really clear, if the thoughts coming through when they wrote it are kind of muddled, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, that's like 5 different shots I could do. Which one's the one? And that took a few years to get past that, to be able to either pick the one or read through all of the stuff going like, what they really want is this, which is a culmination maybe of several shots or something like that.
Yeah.
It's either, but I have been stuck a couple times, especially on some covers once in a while, where I don't know what to do. And I realized there are times when you could just start drawing something like you think it's going to be that. And that's a definite way to go. To just not sit and wait too long. You could do the research and do other things, but I find the longer that you hold off, the worse it gets. But the other thing to do, which will also clarify the situation, is to not try and draw the solution, maybe even try and draw the problem. Going like, well, we know it's not this. Don't draw this shot of this guy, falling on his face, or whatever it is. If it's supposed to be, the thing running into the room, don't draw the idea that you've closed up and you have no idea where he is, or, draw the wrong things first and knock those out. And I found out many times, actually, when I've done that, then the ideas start flowing of what it really was. When you go like, well, you can't light it from that way. This isn't a horror book. You got to light it where it's a nice, happy moment or exciting moment or whatever. In fact, for Patra, when I was working on that,
Available from Dark Horse Comics.
That's exactly. When I was drawing this, the first cover, I was really suffering from kind of like not wanting to do the typical or try some other things, whatever it was. And I was stuck for a while. So I literally filled up a grid of like, I don't know, 10, 12 cover squares, layouts, kind of like these small things, where I just went, I'm going to just draw like environments of where she is and different things going on. Not even draw her in the cover or any of the main characters on the cover, just kind of like, it's a barn, it's a thing, it's a spooky little place here. And then all of a sudden, bam, the idea started flowing by not drawing the actual cover.
Right. Letting your subconscious do the work for you.
But But really, really important point, I think, to add to what Scott just said. I think that's a really great technique, but Scott's still talking about he's thumbnailing it, right? Like,
Yeah.
Scott's not saying like, hey, I don't know what to do for this cover. Let me do a fully finished cover. Nope, that's
Right.
not it. You know what I mean? It's sit there. That's the beauty of thumbnails, is like you could you can, at a very low labor and mental cost, you could just start thumbnailing every bad idea until, you know, you've kind of got them all out of your system, and something in them, you know, and then it's like, right, like, oh wait, this actually turned out to be a good idea, or this one's a pretty good idea, or, you know,
Or it leads to another idea going like, oh wait, it'd be really cool if we did it from this angle.
Yep.
Imagine
It's like, for me, you know, that's what my first draft is thumbnails. You know, I put out, and then sometimes like the rom-com I handed in to my managers that I keep talking about. I had like 70 pages of movie script, and I changed machines and it got lost.
Oh, that hurts.
Change of machines, so I had to start from the beginning. But I wound up with a completely different script, but with the same idea, like what you're talking about, like a variation on the theme. And it to me, it worked better at the end. So it wasn't like, that's happened to me a few times, and I don't really get that sad about it, because it's going to be a lot of typing, but I know it's probably going to wind up being better because I've already done a draft, and now I'm just working from my head.
Exactly. John Cleese has told that same story where he's had skits written out, and then all of a sudden he shows up for the meeting or whatever else going on, and the skit is lost amongst the pages, whatever else going on. He's like, oh no, I've got 2 days. I just spent 6 days trying to finish this story.
Right.
But then he goes, his viewpoint was very similar to that of like, well, I know it already, but also because you're going by your memory of it, you're actually editing it again. And you're picking out your favorite parts that you remember from the first time or the 10th time, whatever when you finally written it up before, and then you wrote it again. Now you've edited it. And then he said there's times when then he's gone back and found the original skit he wrote. And he's like, oh, I'm kind of glad this happened. My next version was better, or the version with other people involved or whatever it was. You always try and save your, you know, what you have in the previous level of it in artwork or writing or any of those things. You save the previous version of the thing. But really, more often than not, you have to go with your gut on so many things, so many decisions. You have to form your own level of taste, or what are the needs of the project or job, and you got to run with it.
I have hard drives here filled with stuff from computers that I don't even know can be read anymore.
Right.
You know, but I can't get rid of the thing. One of the crime comic that Jeff and I are talking about doing, that idea is ancient. I've written that like 6 different times. But now I really know that world, and I can approach it from a different level. Plus Jeff's there, and he's really cool.
Oh, that's very nice. I have a ton of stuff that I'll work on it for a while, and if I hit a snag or something comes up or I get busy, I will just put it in. I'll just put it in a file and put it aside and come back to it later on. Yeah.
It's you know, someone asked, I think Scott asked me, mentioned writer's block when we were planning this, and I think about, did you ever see the interview of Stephen King with George R.R. Martin?
No.
Stephen King's interviewing Martin, and Martin sits down and he says, the first thing is, I just don't know how you write as much as you do, and how it's such quality. I don't know how you get so much done. And King looks at him and goes, you sit your ass in the chair and you type, George. That's what you do.
Well, I mean, Stephen King is amazing.
Yeah, but that's part of it. You know, you can trap yourself by overthinking it instead of just getting down and doing it.
That's for sure. Yeah,
and there are so many distractions in this current day and age.
Yeah.
I've got a hamster. I mean, who wouldn't rather sit and watch the hamster running his wheel than actually work?
Exactly.
Hey, Scott, so those are some quick little thumbnails of like, what's the impetus
right. So while you were talking, I thought of the prompt of, you know, it's a splash page or cover or whatever it is, more like a splash page of, you know, we've got 2 guys fighting and how are we going to do it? So the idea is to just run through different ideas. And I literally just went, what's my first idea is kind of an upshot, but 2 almost equal sized figures facing each other, you know, in you know, without getting into the specifics of their powers or anything else, just having 2 equal sized figures. Then I thought for version B, You could always go in for a close up with fists or whatever, but mostly you get their emotions sometimes, which by the way, I've done. There was a flash splash page where that was one of the other
Flash
tricks to me
page,
of
if you
working
will.
on a, what's that?
I said a flash page, if you will. Please continue.
A flash page, if you will.
Right.
Working on the monthly book, there was also that idea to me of that I had to be aware of what happened the previous 6 issues. And if Jeff might have asked for something similar in mind, I had to tell it a different way visually because they didn't want to see it from last month and this month again. So there was a time when he had 2 characters fighting on the splash page again. And I went, you know what's really, Matt? At this point, these 2 characters really hate each other. There's a whole lot of animosity going on with this. So I went in for the splash page and I went, nope, just their faces. And then thankfully Jeff was really happy with it.
Nice.
But then I thought, okay, but in that one, the problem could be that you don't really know what's going on or where they are or anything else. So instead of the full figure ones, I've also seen splash pages that were like this. They wanted to make the point of where the location is. So then I chose location. They're on like an asteroid out in space. I mean, why not?
Well, it sounds like one of the things you're asking yourself a series of questions. Well, what if I did it from this angle, or what if I did it from that angle? And that's the what if, how, if I was to do this, how would I do that? That magic question, I find, always sparks some sort of movement.
And a lot of times I think that happens at first when you're working in comic books. You go by what you know, you go by the books that you've seen or the artists that you like a lot. But once you've done it enough and done it for a while, even though the blank page can still catch you once in a while, it's going back to like, well, these things worked before. So like all of these ideas might be still thrown out.
Right.
And then they spark that, extra, letter Z version of the idea that goes on with it. So that you do another one where you're behind one of the characters and more facing one of them, or the one, in fact, Johnson did this recently for a story. He did the upshot instead of showing the full figures, showing the one like you're actually in between the fight, in between the 2 guys going at it kind of deal.
Oh yeah.
And
Looking
actually,
up, yeah.
Yeah, and when he showed it to me, I was like, I don't know. That's kind of a hard. I don't know if that's going to be. Turned out to be when he showed the publisher for the that project. That's the one they picked. That's the one they loved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sean, I have a philosophical question for you. Now, when you say
What happens after we?
We need to get a little like title card that says Jeff's philosophy corner, and it just kind of comes up when Jeff has a question like this.
And we all put on
I
togas.
wonder.
It'd be like
togas, yes.
We're the Greeks having the conversation.
Yeah.
I get to be Socrates.
Yeah. So you said you've lost several scripts. It's happened to you several times, and then they always come out better. On some level, do you think you're doing that subconsciously? Like you know that you need to start fresh, but you can't just drop everything. So you've orchestrated some sort of mishap.
I don't think so, because I was so upset about it to begin with and spent so much money on recovery software. Until I realized that I was spending money I didn't need to, and that it wasn't that hard. I mean,
on an unrelated subject, do you maybe need a new assistant, or maybe some better lettering, or maybe stop the day drinking or something?
I don't know about you, but I'm not making enough money for a better assistant.
Yeah,
I've got this guy named Sean who works for me, and
yeah.
he's the only one I trust at this point. No, it was so upsetting the first few times, and now it's like, like I was saying, writing is hard, but compared to like the guys that came and fixed the siding on my house in February, no, it's not hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll sit here with my heater at my desk, with my slippers on, and that's not hard work.
Yeah, that's for sure. The best answer to writer's block or artist block is a bill, a deadline, someone. I was just telling Sean earlier, like I'm much better working in an office, because there's an external expression of time moving that I lose when I'm by myself. And so when I'm in an office, I'm way better about deadlines. I'm way better about getting stuff in and getting all the job of art. I'm way better at that. But I think that's
Well, I
because I'm
remember-
riding the coattails of people in the office.
The
our
energy is
fellow,
different when you're working at home.
Yeah.
our
Sorry, Steve.
fellow Jeff's fellow drink and drawer, and me and Jeff and Sean's fellow past coworker Dave Johnson of the other Johnson clan. I remember him talking about when I think when we were on Justice League, him sort of saying like he liked working in an office far better, or a studio, because he needed other people to ignore, which is a very Dave way of putting it. But
That's it.
I thought, like, if he was just, it's like somehow having the external stimuli, he both needed it, and then he also needed to, like, all right, well, now I need to shut this out, so that I can.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Do you guys have like for me, I find if I start writing first thing in the morning, I get a ton done. If I go to the gym, or if I do some of my other work and don't write until the afternoon, don't nearly get as much done.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
so funny.
Like
I was often like that too, getting up at like 5 a.m. and feeling like I got my most work and productive and everything else going on. Who's the writer of the that guy who just goes around America? He was in the military. He's always solving crimes.
Oh, Jack Reacher.
Reacher.
Yeah, the Jack Reacher.
Yeah.
The author for that has that total different mentality, whatever that he works on.
Yep.
He'll go around in the morning, he will, have his breakfast, he'll do this and that, he might do an errand or whatever else. He won't start until like 1 or 2 in the afternoon. He may not even try and think of the job or nothing. And then he's like, okay, 2:00, I'll start now.
Yeah.
And then he does it that way.
And he sits down and smokes a joint before he goes to work.
Well, there you go.
He said he's written every Reacher novel stoned.
That's amazing.
Which is the last thing I expected from these sort of vaguely right-wing military adventures.
That's amazing.
Well, he is one of those guys that he also just, like King, he doesn't figure the stuff out in advance.
Yeah.
He just starts typing, gets his main character into some sort of jam and goes, and then he'll stop and walk away from the page. Where I was going like, how would he get out of that jam? And then like spends the next hour or whatever it is running through things in his head, and then comes back, sits down, and figures out that thing till he gets to the next jam.
Yeah, like Steve said, I there are people who plan everything out, and there's plot graphs, and there's all different kinds of plots, and there's software you can use to do beat sheets, and they'll help you plot and stuff like that. And I've tried it all, and I just don't get it. To me, the fun is, and I'll do it, for a commercial job. It's not something that I'm running myself, but I just don't get it, because it's the fun of it is just sitting down and figuring out what's going on. And after a certain point, for me, the characters start telling me what's going to go on. I'm not forcing them into stuff. They're setting things up, and I consistently get to like page 70 and find that I've laid a plot line on page 10, and I didn't know I was laying it, but it all becomes very clear later on.
Yep.
Right. No, that's a good. I mean, I've written, nothing compared to you, Sean. Like basically just a series of like, theater scenes. But I have found that exact same experience where I just sort of had this inkling of these two characters talking to each other, and then the next thing you know, like some monologue came out referring to someone that I knew that was when I was 15, that I had no idea, like that suddenly like, oh, this character turned into someone that I knew, 20 years ago, and I had no idea that that was even going to be the thing. Well, to something that actually, something that Jeff said, or what we said about Dave Johnson, it kind of, I have a bunch to say on that subject, but I actually think the working at home versus working in a group environment is maybe a whole other episode. So I'm going to not say anything on that, and just going back to the blank page, something, because I think there's a lot to be said on that subject. So I'm going to just, I say we return to it at some point. But
sure,
that's a great idea, Steve.
Yeah.
Because I think almost all of us have done both, except Scott, who's just a hermit who hates people. But
I worked in house at Marvel and at Valiant.
Yeah, Scott was a Raider back in the day.
Yeah, I forgot he was a Ramita Raider. Okay, I stand scolded and corrected. But I think we, as comic book pencilers or storyboard artists, have it a little bit easier when it comes to the blank page than writers, because you have a script there, and it's mostly, you really only get into that thing that Scott has described. Scott's already kind of described some of the big things. One is if your writer actually hasn't done a very good job,
Right.
like if he's overly described what is supposed to be on that first page or that first thing, or like if there's too much going on, or if they're just not, like that's the only, you very rarely have like, I feel like as artists, we usually, that blank page where there's just nothing, that's more like maybe when you're doing single images or a cover, like a comic book cover or a commission or something like that, where it's like, geez, what?
I'm sorry.
What?
I'm laughing at what Scott's drawing, Jeff. I apologize.
Oh no, I'm watching too. Like he's clearly drawing Jack of Hearts, one of my all-time favorite.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Steve.
Sorry. It's funny that one of Jeff's favorite characters is one of the most detailed and difficult characters to draw.
I mean, it's
in,
not surprising.
In Marvel history.
Yeah. Funny, and yet makes perfect sense.
Exactly.
But so I found it's mostly, we've talked about this before, but I feel like, knock on wood, I've never had too much trouble with like knowing what my brain. I get more into trouble with like too many thoughts, like a log jam trying to go through a tiny, that is the greatest source of my creative frozenness. I wouldn't even call it writer's block or, artist block. It's more like, all right, well, I'm working on this. Yeah, I'm working on this project, but I'd like to also be spending a little bit of time on this other project that's I own. Plus, there's this other, and so then all of those, it's like having 20 different sentences to want to say all at once, and so then what happens is nothing comes out, and then the danger of that is it can feel so overwhelming that there's so much that then you literally like, well, I'm just gonna go watch Peaky Blinders.
Right.
Because
exactly.
Yeah.
So I can get stuck on the what do I very rarely have I don't know what to draw. Well, I guess I don't know what to draw because I've got so many things that I want to draw. How do I prioritize this? How,
too many options paralyzation for sure.
But I think that's different than the typical, or maybe not. I don't know.
I think it is. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you guys about is like, I have my systems for if I hit the snag to work around it and try and get some momentum going. What do you do when you hit that place where you're like, oh, I just can't picture it, or I don't know what to do?
I start making notes.
Oh yeah.
I've got tons of notebooks around my desk here, and I start writing notes and like, what are my ideas and what are the characters and what are they doing? And if I get caught on that, I'll jump onto another project. There's a notebook here I took when we were on vacation 2 years ago, and I outlined, just because I was on vacation, didn't have my computer with me. I outlined like 3 stage plays that I'll probably never write, but that keeps stuff going for me. It keeps things going. So if I get stuck on a project, I sit down and start making notes either on that project or on another project, and it just gets the wheels turning again.
That's smart. That's really smart.
In connection with Steve's comment before, I've also found that writing down those notes, if you have distracting thoughts about another project or another thing going on, or something else you have to do while you're trying to get this page done, but you're worried about getting it done, paying a bill, whatever it is, if you write it down, or if you make an alarm on your phone or something, and something where it's being taken care of, your mind then can relax on it and focus back on the main thing. So if it's bothering you about something else going on, go ahead, write it down, write yourself a note so you'll see it later, and your brain goes, okay, that's done. I don't have to freak out about that anymore. I can go back to this thing.
Yeah.
That's good
What
advice.
about you, Jones?
What about me? What, Jeff?
When you hit a snag, what do you do?
Oh, well, I'm going to start doing what Scott just suggested. I mean, I guess where it's like, what kind of snag? Like, say, I think it. I mean, so much of it's deadline contingent, I guess. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I don't feel like I hit too many snags when it's deadline contingent. I think I've outlined my biggest problem or issue. I think is that I can just get, because there's, if I'm like looking for work, or if I'm busy working on a project, I get a little bit trapped with like there's even if I'm working on a project I absolutely love, there's still some part of my brain that's thinking about like, well, I'd also like to be doing this, or something.
Right.
Yes.
So
yes.
Frazetta suffered from that.
Did he?
Yeah, he'd always rather be playing. He used to say, I'd rather be playing baseball.
Oh, well, that's being a jerk.
Yeah, but I mean, I do think that he would sit down and paint stuff as fast as he could because he had other things he liked doing.
Yeah, wasn't he renowned for like kind of blowing off a deadline until the absolute last hour the night before, then staying up all night and banging out a painting?
Yeah, I just wonder if he needed that panic, that pressure to really get the juices flowing.
Probably.
Yeah, or it was like we were talking about Buscema earlier, is that his first idea was his best idea, and he should have just gone with it.
Right. So I actually have loaded a couple of Buscema. I wanted to show you my trick because this I think is different than.
Hey Jeff, what's your trick?
My trick is this: I get freaked out by the possibility. Like there's too much. The blank page has an infinite amount of options. So I take the blank page, and then I will draw a square, just a square on it. Yeah.
Crumple it up, rip it,
just throw it away. So yeah, then I do a square, which limits my possibilities, and then I put a grid in it. It's just I break it into a three, the simple squares, like the simple, what's it called, the rule of thirds.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I have that, then I've already made this page worthless, right? I've already limited my options, and then I can do this.
There it is.
Yeah. I just keep once I get the pen moving, then stuff starts to flow, right? It's that first line that's the problem. And once I get that going, then it's a lot easier.
So
absolutely.
With what Steve was talking about earlier, with getting a script and stuff, what do you guys think makes a visual script? I like to think I'm a visual storyteller, and my scripts are visually guided. But I read movie scripts all the time because that's part of what I do for a gig, and they describe everything. I mean, her auburn hair flashes in the light with her raven black eyes, closed lidded, but
her pinky ring today is purple, not blue.
Right. Like any director is going to be reading this and going, oh, I have to find somebody with auburn hair. Like, no, fuck you. They're going to hire Lucy Liu. It's that's bullshit. What makes a visual script for you guys?
Well, do you think that kind of script sounds to me like someone who wants to be writing a novel, not writing a script that will serve the purpose of the next guy in the line?
Yes, over and over again, I have seen that, and at the studio, I saw it. We had a couple of people who were like that. Will She'll Go remain nameless. And I don't think they were on any shows that you guys worked on, but some of the other shows I worked on, they were a little.
Though I will momentarily say that what Sean's describing, though, I don't think it inherently means that someone has made a bad script. That could be a lot of, let's be really forgiving and not say extreme. That could be a lot of extra visual information. Like, as long as the script is then still just describing like what are the people doing and saying, then all that extra stuff is not necessarily bad as long as you can still like decipher your way through, like, oh, okay, so he's saying that she walks in the room, puts her car keys down, and goes and opens the refrigerator. Great, I can draw that.
Okay. Two things though. All of us who are professional, no director will take that script because the directing is already done. They it's a real turnoff for them. And secondly, one of the ways movie and TV scripts are judged is the page number. You look for certain events happening on a certain page at a certain time, and that gets blown right out the window by all that stuff.
Right.
Also,
Yeah.
it's so that's kind of what I was getting at. Does that kind of writing, do you feel hemmed in like that, or do you feel freed by something like that somebody's made all those decisions already?
Well, I guess it's two factors, I guess. Like, if someone wants to go to all that freaking trouble, but they still just wrote, like, comic book wise, I'll talk about comics and animation because the animation will relate to the live action stuff. But so if someone wants to go to all that crazy level of work in a comic book script, but it's still basically breaking down to 5 or 6 panels per page on the 22 or 24 page script. And even though they're putting in all this flowery extra stuff and maybe even the inner monologue and all the shit too, but it's still basically like the character is doing this in this panel. And then in the next panel, they're doing this. To me, it's not the end of the world, you know, but right. If I got an animation script that was 53 pages long for a 22 episode thing because of
And
all
we
of what
have
you're
gotten
describing.
them. Yeah.
Yeah. Though sadly, I feel like we've gotten, what's worse, Jeff, is we've gotten 50-page animation scripts that have got like 50 pages worth of shit happening in them. They're not just they're not just overwritten from the way that Sean is describing. They're overwritten because they've got 30 characters doing 30 things on every, you know.
Yep.
And there's definitely a school of animation writers that seem to think like, oh, it's because it's just drawing. We have an unlimited budget. It's just the power of imagination.
Yeah,
It could be anything.
And
yes.
rather than like,
was more
look,
than
there's
one
a
meeting.
I've
labor.
met some of those guys.
Yeah, there was more than one meeting I was in with the writers going, animation does not mean you can do anything. It means you can do anything that our budget and time can allow.
Well, I think the difference I felt between someone who was good to work with and whose script, even if it was well written and even if all those details were interesting, the idea that whoever, like, how do you make the next guy's job easier?
Right.
That's right. Like, no matter whose job it is down the line, if you're a storyboard artist, I would try and do as much designing on the fly as I could, you know. So if it came, like, if we were doing a background or something, I would do whatever time allowed. I would help the background guy, like, oh, here's my perspective, here are the general shapes of things we're gonna do, this is sort of the reference or prop or whatever. You definitely try and make the next guy's job easier, as opposed to giving him, like, what did John Byrne do to Terry Austin once? He wrote door. He wrote
And lamp.
blob and wrote lamp. Right? Like, it's just not being that guy.
To Jeff's point, I'm forgetting now who, but there's this really talented storyboard artist. This woman put out a thing a few years ago where it was basically just talking about how important it was to just have really good perspective and backgrounds in your storyboards, because it's like, look, you're, you know, like if the BG artists are having to go through and fix all of your backgrounds, then that's a huge drain on the production. And if you're, you know, even if you're not getting designs when you should, if you're at least nailing the perspective well, then you're making everyone's job after you that much easier, you know.
Totally. Yeah.
And you guys were really good at that because of the comic book background. You were used to having to do 90% of that work, where people who come up straight through storyboards, they're used to getting a pack of all that stuff and not having to figure it out as they go along. But especially on Batman and Superman and Justice League, we just didn't have time. It just didn't work that way.
I do think that. Okay, Chief.
I just feel like I've been on both sides of that, right? Like, I actually started as a background assistant for Jeff and on Sean's book Aquaman, so that's a really good proving ground about learning to do backgrounds and get better at them. But you know, I also worked on an animated series where the person running our show just didn't really have much understanding or sympathy for like what the actual pipeline was, and so I think I've mentioned this before, but I'll keep mentioning it till I die. I remember just for shits and giggles, there was one episode where I tracked how many work hours I spent designing backgrounds, because they would regularly hand out the script to us with no designs, you know. maybe one character design. And so I'm like, oh, I spent 40 hours. I spent one full week of my storyboard designing backgrounds because we had no backgrounds. And they always, and they played a key part of the story. It wasn't just like, all right, well, I can just put in a perspective grid here. They'll have to figure out. It was like, oh,
you weren't designing spoons.
They're in a museum, or they're at the Lincoln Memorial, or they're at something where it's directly plot related. And so, you can't just phone it in with a perspective grid,
Yeah.
Right.
They're at Metropolis Stadium during a football game with a crowd, and
right.
That's not like a joke. I mean, that kind of shit happened all the time.
No.
Yeah,
you're giving us all hives right now, Sean.
Yeah.
In an ideal world, storyboarding is such a hard. In an ideal world, you're being handed a design pack at your handout. And
right.
I mean, boy oh boy, if you want to be spoiled, work on a show that Vince Toyama is the
Vince is a genius.
Background designer on, and I think I came on to like the third or fourth. I think I started on the third season of Transformers: Robots in Disguise, and it was like such a treat because like Vince and that they designed the whole world already, and they had like CG, like they had like Google SketchUp models of the main backgrounds as well too. So it just gave you. You could just think about staging.
Yeah.
You didn't have to worry about designing, which is not your job,
Well, and Vince even did that. I was going to say, Vince even did that on the Boondocks. So like all the, like Riley's room, the house, I mean, everything, like the mall. I mean, he built models. You always knew everything about that world was real. And you exactly knew. Well, I guess that's one of the things, like the blank page really only becomes a nightmare when you don't know what to put on it, right? Like, and if you have someone who's given you an animation pack with all the backgrounds and character designs, that gets a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. When we were doing Gene Fusion, it was a production on the go. It was a feature I did in Montreal, and I remember we had sat down with the background designer, and the script had called for a sports stadium that could seat 250,000 people. Jesus. And he came in with this CAD design, this CG design, and he and a page of math he had done. So if we this much space for each person, and we figure it's this many levels, then it has to be this wide. And he'd done all this work, which was awesome. But I looked at it and went, dude, I've got to stage what's going on at the bottom there. It doesn't matter to the story that this actually can fit 250,000 people. All we need to see is that it fits a shit ton of people, and we can do the staging on the ground.
Right.
And he just looked at me and went, okay, but it says in the script, and I did the math. And the math says this is what it would look like.
Yeah, and that guy he and I would be friends, I bet.
Well, but that goes back to your point, Sean, is that I think a lot of times what's really one of the key factors in getting a good script or something like that might be easier to then work with is that either in conjunction with the actual editor of the book or not, but the writer has to edit himself. I mean, we wound up editing ourselves as we're drawing the whole thing, going like, I could draw this. I have this whole stadium. Oh, I got to draw this. No, you don't have to draw the whole stadium for this shot. There might be an establishing shot or something like that you show the helicopter view of the stadium or something like that. Sure, but you got to pick and choose your battles, whatever. So I think there's a lot of that with a writer too, where they don't just write out everything and every angle and every color of hair and all those different things. They have to edit themselves down to. It's probably different for the movie stuff, but in the comic book stuff, the what's being said, what's being done. And maybe a bit of what the subtext might be of why they're saying what they're saying or different things. So that in case, to me, the other thing about a writer or good writer for comic books is being flexible. Is going like, okay, this is what I built and it's really cool. Oh, but I'm going to have to work with this artist too. And they can't just be a monkey supposedly drawing what's in my head. They have to be allowed to fulfill themselves and continue to advance the story farther if they can. So if they think, it's not just this, we can add in this part too, which really tells the whole subtext of what's going on. You got to roll with that.
that's what makes me crazy about the stuff that I was talking about before, and that Steve was talking about, is that you have to trust these are collaborative. Making a movie, making a TV series, making a comic book, making a animated show. These are collaborative environments, and if the writer, which they often do, and this is coming from someone who's a writer, thinks that they have the best idea that there ever is, then you draw the fucking book.
Yeah.
If you want to work with somebody, give them the grace to come up with something better than what you thought. And I have almost never been disappointed that way. When I shot Twilight last night, of the Twilight, available now on YouTube for free, every scene was boarded. I knew exactly what every scene was going to be, but that didn't mean I didn't leave room for the cinematographer to try something different, or for the actors to try something different. Because why am I hiring other people if they're not bringing something else to the table?
Right.
Exactly.
Well, I think to your point, Sean, and what talking about the stadium and what you were just saying, Scott, though, too, it's like budget and schedule kind of determine everything always when it comes to any project. And I think, and maybe that's the biggest, like say with Jeff saying, it's the thing that everyone in the schedule has to always be keeping in mind. And we've all been guilty of it too, right? Like whether it's been a writer that Sean is a writer that overwrote something and didn't keep in mind the budget or the schedule, or we as pencilers, if we took up too much time and we took up the inker or the colorist's time and didn't give them enough time on the next, or if we, if we left it for like, oh, well, the revision artist or the background people or whatever, they'll figure this stuff out. But it's, and I think that's what's frustrating about when we mention these writers that have been like, oh, let's just imagine that our budget's unlimited. Like we can think of all the times we've seen movies where they had a big enough budget where they're like, oh, Last Boy Scout or some other big Hollywood film, it seems like they actually went to a real stadium and filled it with real people. Amazing. And then we've seen movies where, like they only shoot it from one side, and they maybe they've got 30 extras that they keep just layering in front of the camera in certain way, there's a creative way to do every single thing. But what will kill you is when, right, your background artist thinks he's working on $100 million Tony Scott film, and he's actually only working on a $2 million independent film, and you've got to know what project you're working on.
Yeah. Right. And what tells the story the best way? What's important to the story? It's not, it's not that shot. All this stuff I see about, movies, they spent 12 hours doing this one shot. Like, does that shot the whole movie? Did that make the movie appreciably better? That one shot looked great? I don't think so.
Yep.
Yeah, balancing getting it done with having a vision and also everyone going home to see their families. I think that's the best productions I've ever worked on had an incredible balance of like everybody put in a ton of hours and they worked really hard, but the people in charge every step of the way tried to make the process smoother and simpler. And that
or making your release date, where it's like,
right.
It's like, okay, well, hey, I just want one more shot at giving some notes on this page or these designs or this whatever. It's like, okay, but you realize that we're supposed to publish this thing in June, or we're already late, or
right.
Or you realize that we've told the network that we will be delivering an episode to them on this date. So
exactly.
There is no more notes. I'm sorry you don't like it. We might not like it either. Right. But what are you going to do?
And you'll be fined several $1,000s if you don't make that date.
Yeah.
What are we looking at, Scott? Besides
that black and white stuff is great, Scott.
So these are the drawings, the black and white drawings for the cover of Patra, but I'm showing this back filler stuff because these are some of my roughs on pages. I'm sorry the camera is being a little bit unfocusy. But these are how I break down pages. Like if we look at page 1, if you can see it at all.
What size do you do those at?
That's probably close to size. Mine are a little bit bigger than that. Mine are usually about credit card size, maybe just a little bit smaller than that. I usually
But a
can
lot
fit
of-
about 10 of them on a page.
So you would
A lot
describe
of
those
people
as
don't know is
thumbnails, right?
For
Literally,
people who don't know
he
a credit card.
he literally draws each one on his thumb, and then he wears a
Yeah.
jeweler's glass to
But then
And he
I
doesn't
work this
project
out
it out.
backward and forward and around until you get to.
People don't know Scott's real last name is Lang, Scott Lang, and he actually shrinks down and draws
I
them.
do.
That would be a
So
good
how-
system.
How many times will you rework something like that? I mean, are you at a point where your thumbnail is usually your best idea, like we were talking about earlier, or are there times when you feel like you have to worry a page to death to get it to the point to where you're comfortable with it?
It depends on the page, and it's not necessarily fearing the blank page at that point. But one panel may not feel strong or feel right, even in this stage as I'm working on it. Sometimes I'll go ahead and rough out to the next stage, which actually this is a full size. This would have been 11 by 17 drawing. This is my underdrawing basically, almost my pencils for that I ink over and finish this kind of way. But I've also learned to, when I don't like the page or different thing going on, I'll either jump to the page that I feel most comfortable with, especially if it's a new project, or I will go ahead and not panic when I start working it out full size, and maybe it's still not working the way that I want it to. I think that's all I have in here for roughs.
Oh,
But
that's awesome.
Oh, those I love that character design.
Yeah.
these were
yeah.
test panels. That before we started with the issue and stuff, I wanted to try some test panels of just trying to get the ambiance, the different things going on, whatever,
Mhm.
I hadn't
Super
done really a
creepy.
horror book like this before.
And did you wind up actually using those, or did they just inform what you did later on?
This one just informed what I did. I did use this, which actually then is, they even used it at the beginning, where? In the early papers of the book.
In the Zen
thought
papers,
they did.
right?
Oh, maybe it's on another one. Oh, no. Anyway, they used it somewhere else in the book as well. So some of them do become something else when you've hit that right drawing. In fact, the basic idea for this one, I don't know if it's in here. I had drawn, yeah. So one of the first drawings I did of
Oh, cool.
Patra was this, which is actually ultimately very close to that final cover of her just kind of standing there with all the spooky stuff around her, which is, normal for a cover. I kind of fought it at first. I want to try and do something else. What actually made this cover interesting for me was doing the lettering then.
Oh yeah,
And
that came out
then
great.
even putting them in the wrong order, so it would kind of make you jump around the page going like, wait, what did that say? Let me read that again. What's going on here? Because I read
Excellent.
that or heard that old school reasoning for why they put all that conjecture, whatever they put on the covers. It was only to serve the purpose, as I understood it, to get people to stop and look and go, wait, this cover told me stop,
Right.
look out. There's a thing going on or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
And it would catch your eye and you'd catch that word and then you want to figure out what that sentence said or something like that. So it's literally only reasonably put there for that reason of selling the book, so that you see it across the room or whatever it is and you go, oh wait, what did that say? So I really enjoyed doing that on this stuff as well. But that was one of those added pieces later on. When I first started those cover roughs and different things, I didn't have that at first in mind. But by the time I got to this stage, and these were the ones I showed James, again, it's really hard to tell, but some of them, if I was able actually to zoom in, you'd see that some of the writing is similar to the one on the final cover. I gave him
Mhm.
ideas of what I wanted, and then James and I talked it over, and then he changed some and added some and thought, better of this one, that one, whatever it was. But yeah, I mean, that's the idea, is getting past that blank page. Sometimes it's just throwing out those first 3-5 ideas, seeing where it goes, seeing where it takes you, then going to the next 5 ideas. And maybe one of those 5 ideas is the final one. Or maybe it's another set down the line, but you just keep plugging away at it. Sometimes it's going to happen really easy. Other times we've all heard stories about every artist out there, doesn't matter, Steve Rude, Walt Simonson, whatever else, that they're walking around around the house, pulling their hair out going, I can't draw. I've
Yeah,
forgotten how to draw.
Right.
Yeah.
We all have those moments of doubt.
For
Yeah.
sure. Well, I mean, for one other thing I think is interesting is like the question of what am I doing is, am I trying to create an image for the story? Am I trying to create an image for like to grab someone's attention as a cover? I think that like depending on what problem you're solving, I think it's always good to ask yourself ask yourself that question before you start drawing, and then stuff will pop into your head.
And there are plenty of artists I can think of that do absolutely the work that way. I think Michael Golden has at least mostly been that way of working, where, you know, he'll get a job, and sometimes, yes, he was later on the job, but he would spend half of the time of the deadline of the job literally just thinking about the job first, building
right.
it in his head all the way through with the page or the whole issue or covers, whatever it was, until he had it rock solid in his head. Then he would just walk over and draw it. Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, like Jeff was talking earlier, when I'm starting a project, I tend to stop and just stare a lot, and I'm watching the movie in my head and deciding, you know, what's going to stay and what's going to go, and I'm going to tell it.
Yeah, it's
wool gathering, if you will.
Yes.
So, well, we're getting close to the end, but before we go, I wanted to throw out one of the things that is a go-to, I think, for most comic book artists is this little gem from back in the day.
Oh yeah,
The 22 panels when you're out of ideas.
22 panels that always work.
Yeah. So I always thought that was great. Even if you get stuck, you're like, oh, okay, I just do one of these. and I can get at least some movement going. I always found too that when I was doing a page, if I didn't know what to do, I'd write myself a list. I had to have one background, one establishing background, one close up, one extreme angle, and one medium shot. As long as I had, and as long as I could figure out what one of those was going to be, then the dominoes would start to fall into place, and it became a little bit easier.
That's a very classic method of making sure each page is kind of rounded out and covers the bases and tells the story and everything. So if somebody opens that book at that page, then they probably know where they were, whatever the layout was, who was involved, what was going on, and hopefully even the context or the emotion going on.
Yeah. I was always,
and a lot of these Wally Wood.
Oh, go ahead, Scott.
A lot of these Wally Wood ones aren't even necessarily the idea of dealing with a blank page. There is that factor that you can get from all of them, but it's also there literally just the idea of like what we've had a lot in recent comic books was, you know, talking head pages or something like that, where the writer and editor give you almost no action or anything involved with it. That going on with these 2 people or 5 people or whoever's in the room. This is a way to then visually break up those talk scenes and maybe pick the right one that might hint at different actions or emotions or things going on.
Yeah. Alex Toth, I think, was the best at making boring conversation interesting. I mean, he did a comic of Arsenic Old Lace that's stunning.
Really? I've never seen that.
Yeah, I've got to see that too.
It's amazing. Yeah.
I love that play in that movie.
Yeah, I do too. Gulacy was good at that too with the
he really was.
Spy stuff.
His Bond stuff was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's always dangerous to ever bring this guy up, but it's not fair. But all of Frazetta's romance comics, I think, do this
they're
super
so good.
well.
Yeah.
Where it's like, and let's put this incredible statue in the foreground that's also subtextually commenting on what's happening between the characters. Let's, you know.
Yeah, there's this great cowboy riding a bronco horse in the foreground while 2 people are arguing.
It was brilliant.
Yeah,
Romita's romance comics too, because they're all about the body language with the characters, and that there's no action in the scene, but there's tons of action because of what the people are going through. And he was and Kurt Swan was pretty good at body language too, just good at telling you what the characters are going through by the way they're posed out, and it was like they were like watching a movie. And that was one of the things I thought was really great about. I know I keep saying this, but that Romita run on Spider-Man, because the drama of all the characters outside of the costumes was so, you know, tangible.
Yeah, his characters really interacted beautifully together.
That's true. I guess when I think about Romita Spider-Man, my brain immediately just starts thinking about Peter and Gwen and Mary Jane and Harry. I don't really think about, like, even though there's plenty of good action, that's not really where my brain goes. It goes to all of the supporting characters and all the people dancing at a malt shop type stuff, or
Yep.
all
Yep.
that, all the
Yep.
kind of
The soap opera.
romance comics aspect of it. Yeah.
Totally.
And he
Yep.
could make that. He could make that really graphic. It would look great on the page. There was nothing dull about it at all.
Mm-hmm.
Nope.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, I
Right.
think so. We didn't get to them, but I did download some of these John
Wow.
Buscema layouts.
Those look terrible.
I know they're awful.
Yeah,
Um,
just garbage.
but since we're running out of time, maybe we'll do a whole section on making like the layout stage, like
Layouts,
keeping it,
yeah.
keeping it loose, trying to work the ideas out,
For
trying
a
to
whole
figure out
episode,
the
why we
story.
hate John.
Oh my God, his stuff. I bought some of those way back in the early '90s. I have them in a box, and they're so fast and so strong. The side of the pencil, and there's just so much. There's so few lines, but it looks exactly like Conan. There's no doubt about it. You know
And
who
so much
exactly that
energy.
is.
It's
Yeah.
like Kurtzman's layouts too.
Mm.
Very classic
Yeah.
way of doing it.
Yeah, we should.
By the way,
we
before
should
we
have
sign
an
off-
episode with just layouts.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Before we go, the reason I did Jack of Hearts was not for Jeff Johnson.
What? Liar.
What?
I had I'd come across a video on YouTube. I am sorry I don't have the name in front of me of what it is. Something Fifey, Fife. The link and stuff is on my Facebook and my other socials. But he had a Keith Giffen thing that he does a whole retrospective, like 5 or 6 videos that are hours and hours long, going through his entire career. And one point in there, we just talked about this the other week though, about Jack of Hearts. He showed the pages in White Tiger that Keith drew, and that's where Jack of Hearts came from. So now I've
Wow.
seen, because I hadn't seen before, I saw the panel that Keith first drew with that insane costume.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, Keith was
God
awesome.
bless
Those
him.
layouts that he did were amazing. They were like almost, they weren't as much as the clothespin head bobbleheads that we do a little bit for storyboard layouts.
Right.
But they were, and a lot of them were kind of straightforward, almost boring eye level stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But like he hit the right beat to tell you the story with the minimum amount of information.
Yep.
And it was always a good flow, right? And every page had every page was about something specific. It began and ended well, and it led into the next page. And they were super fast drawings.
And Keith was like that kind of like talking about writers being flexible. He was that same kind of creator too, where he would give you all of those and he would do a 6-panel grid or whatever it was on the page. And he never expected you to follow exactly what he was doing or anything of the sort. I'm not sure exactly how that translated in animation, but on the comic book page, I could do the exact 6 panels that he'd asked for. I could do 7, I could do 5, I could do all sorts of stuff. He goes, as long as you tell the story basically that I'm telling there, and you don't like throw out a cat or something that we didn't have in the story, or you do something weird with it.
Right.
He's like, go to town, have as much fun with it as you can. And if you want to bring something more of that story that we're trying to tell, great. We did an opening in Blue Beetle where Keith hadn't even come up with a reason for it, but Blue Beetle was going to be brought to this underground area where he was going to wind up facing some villains. And the inference was that the armor was kind of leading him there. But Keith drew the layouts for it where Jaime, the main character, was conscious. And he's like, where are we going, armor? Or whatever kind of thing. And they had a little conversation. I actually thought it was funnier, which usually went along with Keith's stories, if Jaime was asleep and the armor was taking him to the spot. So I did the pages and I kept trying to check with Keith on some of these decisions. He's like, no, go for it. I will work with what you give me. So I did those pages where Jaime was asleep until he got down there facing his big bug villains. Then he wakes up, he's like, waking up seeing giant bug villains in front of him. And Keith was always fluid like that, just the great guy who, yes, would give you all the basics you needed to tell the story, but at the same time was completely almost hands off, going like, do with it whatever you want. I've even ran into things that didn't make sense, and I went, should I change that? That didn't work the way we intended it to. He's like, nope, keep it.
Yeah. Well, he always wanted it to be a surprise, with the
Yeah.
What did he say, that if you're not surprised, then the reader's not going to be surprised?
Yep. Yep.
It was a Julie Schwartz thing. He said Julie told him several times over that if the kids know what's happening on the next page of your story, you've lost them.
Yeah.
You bored them.
Yep.
Oh. All right, gentlemen.
Well, that's a good ending point.
Yeah.
We've
Don't
done
bore
it again.
We'll be back next week at the same time on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube.
All right, guys. It was good hanging out.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.